Welcome to We Can Code It Career Services. In this session, we are going to talk about behavioral interviews. If you've ever had to interview for a job in the past, it's possible that you've already answered behavioral interview questions before. Behavioral interviews are centered around questions such as, tell me about a time when, or can you give me an example of, as a means for the interviewer to get a sense of the way you've handled situations in the past to better understand how you may handle them while working at their company. Some questions may not follow the same format to hint to you that they are behavioral, but a good way to look at it is if the interviewer is asking about something you did, use the behavioral approach. This is a great opportunity, again, to talk about your past accomplishments. There are 3 steps we are going to follow when answering behavioral questions. You may have heard of these steps referred to as the STAR method or the SAR method. Both methods follow the same steps, they're just broken out a little bit differently. So, step 1, describe the situation and task. Step 2, describe the action you took. And step 3, describe the result of your action. Here are a few tips we want you to follow when answering. Be specific about the facts of the situation. Keep to the main points. Focus on what you did, not your team, because remember, they're interviewing you and not your team. The situation and result should be succinct. Put the emphasis on the action you took. So, when you're starting to answer your behavioral question, what is meant by that is you're going to want to spend most of your time on the actual action, which is step 2. Use step 1 to set the scene, to give a little bit of background information and context. In step 2, you're going to want to emphasize the actions you took. And in step 3, you're also going to spend a little bit of time, not nearly as much as you do on step 2, to close out your answer by telling the result. There are a few things we want you to avoid when answering behavioral interview questions. The first one is rambling. It's important that your story is easy to follow and gets to the point. Not answering the question that was asked. Think about what information the interviewer may be trying to learn about you by asking the question, and ensure you're answering what they're asking. Sharing a negative perspective and speaking poorly of individuals or a company. Some questions may even focus on a challenging time or situation from your past experiences. For example, the question, tell me about a time when you disagreed with your coworker on a decision. Even though you may have had negative feelings at the time of the incident, or perhaps you still do not have fond feelings of the coworker, it's important that you remain professional. Stick to only the facts. Leave your opinions out of it. Taking the negative route will say more about who you are as a person and as a professional than it would the other person. Also, remember, they aren't interviewing the other person. They're interviewing you. So you're always going to want to put your best character forward. Not clearly following the STAR structure. Hiring managers and recruiters are expecting you to follow the structure for the answers you deliver. Make sure it's clear you are doing just that. An area to pay close attention to is the result portion of your answer. It's a common mistake to leave the result unclear, ambiguous, or left to be assumed by the interviewer. This lesson is really short, and that's because the best way to really understand behavioral interviews is by practicing them. We've included 7 practice questions to get you started. You can also Google top behavioral interview questions and how to answer them. There are tons of resources on behavioral interview questions. Try to get as much practice as you can and answer as many questions as possible. For your homework, I want you to create a chart like the one below, where you will fill it in with SAR or STAR structured stories for each category, for each job and project you have listed on your resume. Design this well so it can be used as a study guide tool for you during phone interviews and for prepping for in-person interviews. So, For each project and job you have listed on your resume or you plan to discuss, make sure you have a star story for challenges, mistakes or failures you've had, things that you've enjoyed, leadership roles you've taken on, conflicts you've had and resolved, and what you'd do differently. Lastly, we've included a couple of different additional resources: LinkedIn Behavior Interviewing Guide and Employer Mock Interview Evaluation Form to give you some guidelines on how you may be evaluated during an employer mock interview or a real behavioral interview.